Welcome to Interviewing the Experts, and this is one of the last financial books that I'm going to do in this financial book series, and it is Unshakable by Tony Robbins. And it is essentially the sequel to Tony Robbins' Money Master the Game, which is one of the best financial books that I think it exists. The whole idea of this book is essentially him wanting to write another book to make some more money. But this book is extremely useful for you and me because he breaks down a lot of the things that he skimmed over in more depth, clarifies things that some people misunderstood, and adds a little bit more to other things that he didn't even talk about. And so a lot of things that is in Money Master the Game is in this. I'm going to try not to talk about those things over again. And I'm just going to talk about some of the extra stuff. But it's still an extremely useful book. You should read it. I really got a lot of value out of it as well. So let's jump into this with the first thing that that's really important about this book. And he really emphasizes the mindset in this one. 80% of success, this is a quote that he likes to quote, and it's 80% of success is psychology, 20% is tactics. So if you don't have the right mindset, then the how to do it doesn't matter. Because if you're not going to do it, then even if you have the perfect strategy, it won't matter. If you don't have the faith that it will work, you're not going to do it. So that's all psychology. And making sure that your psychology around success is super important. That's why Think and Grow Rich and The Billionaire Mind are both super important books to read as well. This one emphasizes a lot about psychology as well. The next thing to talk about is you're an investor. It doesn't matter if you're in the stock market or whatever. Just by being a productive adult, you're an investor. Most of us make the crappiest investments there is, and it is trading time for money. It's the most inefficient way that you can make money. However, it is the most universal way to make money. And you are constantly investing in stuff, whether that stuff is junk, whether that stuff is liabilities like a car, a house, and stuff like that, or whether that stuff that you're investing in is assets which will produce more income for you to then invest some more. And we all do all three a lot of the times, or at least we all do the first two. Unfortunately, a lot of people won't invest in assets, which is why it's important to learn money skills so that way that you start doing that. And you're already listening to this podcast, which is another form of investment, which is investing in yourself in knowledge, and that you're investing your time. So that's basically the idea of you're already an investor. How about you get good at investing instead of being crappy at investing? The next thing to talk about is fear makes you lose money. When you're afraid, you will act rashly and not do what will do best. One great tip for investing in the stock market, in the stock market is when everybody's freaking out, invest. When everybody's feeling fantastic, sell. If you just do that, you'll already be doing great compared to most people. And another great rule for investing in the stock market is, actually that goes into the next principle, which is invest for the long term. That's why it's super important to get in early because of the compound effect, which we talked about in one of the principal episodes recently. And also it'll be on one of the Motivational Monday episodes, so watch those. But the compound effect makes it so the longer that you are invested, the more you'll get out of it. So if you invest $20K when you're 18 versus if you invest $200K when you're 40, the one who invested just $20K will have more money than the one who invested $200K just due to the compound effect of time. So make sure that you get in early and make sure that you stick for the long term. Don't invest in stocks and other things that you think that you'll have to sell within the next period of time. Basically, buy it and forget it exists until you're old, and you'll already be ahead of most investors. Problem is most people are impatient, so that's why a lot of people don't do that. Most people also buy into fear, which is why most people will sell when the stock market is down and buy when it's up. But if you bought when it was down and sold when it was up, you do great as well. And the reason why it's super important to just stick in the long term is because the market always goes up. We will have dips and we will have rises, and it'll go all over the place. But over the long term, it is a slow graph going upwards. So if you wait for a long period of time, it doesn't matter if you invested when it's high or when it's low, because after 40 years, its low will still be higher than when you bought it. So invest for the long term, and that's where making sure that you're covered, not just financially, but having food storage and stuff like that as well comes in handy, because you're less likely to freak out if you know that your family's going to be okay no matter what happens in the stock market and no matter what happens to your money. Because if you can still feed your family, you can still live comfortably even if everything fell apart, you're going to be less likely to buy into the idea that this time it's different and all of your money is going to disappear and you're going to have nothing left. So invest for the long term and make sure not to buy into fear. The next big takeaway, which you went into a little bit, is index funds. This comes from another book, but Warren Buffett's advice for his family for investing is to invest in index funds. Unless you want to spend a significant amount of your time studying and researching the stock market, then the best second alternative is to invest in index funds because they match the market. And like we just talked about, the market goes up over time. So buying an index fund mitigates your risk and makes it so you don't have to think about it. And that's a very useful thing for 99% of people. So if you're going to invest in the stock market, and unless you are really knowledgeable in stocks, you should invest in index funds. The next big takeaway, already talked about a little bit, is don't lose. When you lose money, it takes way longer to rebuild back up than it does to just make sure that it's easier to not lose money and gain a little bit than it is to possibly gain a lot and lose everything and then try and build back up just to where you were before. So the first rule of investing by Warren Buffett is don't lose. So how do you do that? One great way to do that, he goes into depth is asymmetrical rewards. And basically it's the idea of if I bet $1 to make $5, I can be wrong 4 out of 5 times and still break even. So I didn't lose any money. And that's basically the idea. If you bet $1 to make 5, you can be wrong 4 times out of 5 and still make lots of money. And if you do better than that, maybe or only wrong twice, you'll make a significant amount more. Basically, it's making sure that your risks of loss is covered by your opportunities of gain. Next big takeaway is taxes. It doesn't matter what you make. It matters what you keep. The same thing goes for savings and all that. And if you didn't watch last week's episode, go watch it. It's all about taxes. That's what the book is about, is taxes. And if you let the government take all of your money, then you didn't make much money. And so making sure that you minimize your tax burden, not saying illegally avoid taxes, but make sure you do the things that are in your best interest for your taxes. That's something that you really need to focus on. And I believe that's it, but no. The next one, the last one, is back to a psychology thing, and it's making sure that you live in a beautiful state. And I'm not talking about location. I'm talking about making sure that your mindset is happy. Because if you're, I love the way Gary Vee describes it, crying in your Ferrari is still miserable. If you're happy in your cheap little ghetto car, you're happier than the guy who's crying in his Ferrari. Wealth doesn't make you happy. Wealth can be very useful to give you the resources that help make it easier to be happy. But wealth itself doesn't make you happy. Happiness really, when it comes down to it, is all in your head. And so you have to choose to be happy. There's a lot of things that you can do to help with that, which I will talk about more when we talk about the principles of happiness. But you have to make sure that your mindset is beautiful. Make sure that you feel abundant and cheerful. Just enjoy life. Life is too short to be miserable all the time. And with that, I will leave that here for today. I'll see you all next week.